G'day everyone, welcome back to Beast Lab. Today I'm going to be upgrading these hair clippers. These batteries here they come with are very expensive to replace. They want $40 for 3 batteries just because they're joined together, but we can get away without having to spend that $40, and I'll show you how. I'll also show you how to disassemble these clippers so you can service them yourselves, replace the batteries and keep them going and keep them out of landfill. It's going to be very cost effective, nowhere near $40, that's for sure. So stay tuned, I'll show you exactly how to save yourself a bit of money. We'll take a look at the battery that came out of that small clipper. It stopped working a long time ago. You can see there, I've had to put a bit of solder on that little connection. That had snapped off completely. Because that had snapped off, the battery drained flat, couldn't be charged. So now it's just rubbish. I soldered that together, tried to get a bit of charge into it, but no good. So we'll just replace that battery. We'll do it for ourselves. Won't go with that factory one, that's for sure. Here's the little mini trimmer. We'll take the cover off and show you inside. I've taken these little screws out already. Here's a little screw that goes into that clipper blade. That's that countersunk one there. You take that off, and then this blade set will flip out. It's under pressure, it's on a little spring, so I'll just fold up like that. You can move that out the way. Then you get this little spacer here. If you get a screwdriver and place it in behind this point here and just hinge that forward like this. You don't want to rip it up. It's like on a hinge assembly, so it will just flick up like that. That little tag there clips under here. So lever that up and it will come away. Then you're left with this here. You can see the 2 screw holes down in here. You take these ones out. Another little torque screw. Once you've done that, this can just be pulled apart. It's a little bit stiff. You just take your time. Same thing, it'll hinge out from the bottom. Don't try and rip the bottom off because you'll break that little bracket there. So it'll hinge away, and there you go, you got access. And you can see there, I've soldered in just a cheap nickel metal hydride battery. A little spot of solder on that end, another little spot there, so you don't need that factory plug that snapped anyway. So they put that little thing there, but that just snapped off with all the vibration, so give that a miss. Just direct connect the battery there. I'll show you exactly how to do it on the bigger model. This bigger model is exactly the same process. Take those clipper blades off. That'll give you access to the 2 retaining screws for the cover, and then the cover just pulls off as well. There's the little screws, and there's the blade assembly for the larger set. I'll start putting the pack together for the large clipper. We've got to get 3 batteries, probably some hot glue just to put them in this configuration. And then put some tabs across the ends, put them in series, and then solder to the board. We won't go with these factory clips again. They seem like they're a bit of a problem anyway. So let's get stuck into it. I went and got another 3 batteries from my stash. I've got a couple of weights on the board there, so I can hold those batteries parallel to one another and spaced apart, just like the original set. Now that I've got it like that, I can get a little bit of hot glue and just put a dab on either side of the battery. Keep that in position while we solder it together. So I'll just put a little tiny dab of hot glue on the end of that battery there. Make sure everything's lined up still. And then another little dab on the other side. That should be enough for now. We'll let that cool down. And then we can start putting the tabs on. Doesn't have to be too neat. Alright, I've got everything joined up there. Might just put a little bead along the entire length there, just to make sure it's nice and sturdy. So I'll run that little bead across here. And I'll do the same on the other side. That should keep things nice and sturdy. The glue's nice and cool now. Fairly sturdy there. That should be plenty. Just to keep things together. You can see there I've got the ends all lined up. So then we can put our little bridges across. Take a look at the original pack there. You can see we need to connect these two here on the left side. We'll get them prepared now for that soldered joint. Before you can solder to a battery, you do have to scratch up the coating. So take your little file and just work that center there till you got it nicely scratched up. And do the same on that pin, positive of that battery. Once you got that coating scratched up, then the solder can stick to it. You need to get down to the base metal below the coating. Doesn't take much, just a little scratch. That should be plenty now. Take a bit of that dust off and grab a little bit of wire. I've cut off a little bit of red wire. I've stripped the ends off. I'll place that wire in the alligator clip now. I'll tin up the ends. And then we can get to soldering it all together. I've got the iron set to 320 degrees Celsius. Just put a little bit of solder on the ends there, tin that wire up. You've got to do this very quickly. You just want to put a spot of solder on those bits you've roughed up on the battery. You don't want to get the battery hot, so it's got to be done fairly quickly and efficiently. Little spot on the iron, make sure you got a clean tip, and then add that spot to the top of the battery and then remove the iron straight away. You don't want it getting too hot. You'll end up destroying your battery. There we go. Now you can put that little bridge in place. Place that on top. Grab the iron again. Little spot of solder. And very quickly dab it on. There we go. That's one. And that's the other one. You can give it a quick blow just to cool things down immediately. And that's that join done there. You've got the two negatives and a positive. And here's a positive and then your two negatives. Now I'll scratch up this surface here. And that can be soldered directly to the board. I'm not going to use those little lugs that are on there. I'll just directly connect it with a bit of solder. I'll scratch that up, get rid of that coating, remove the dust, and then we're ready to go. I'll flip that over now. Put the other bridge in. We take a look at the batteries. We want it to be joining from the center to the cell on the left, and on the other end it's the same, from the center to the cell on the left. So now I can scratch up those surfaces. And we'll add that little jumper wire in across there. It's the negative. And then the positive. I'll get another short piece of wire, tin that and solder it in position. Should be enough. Quickly just tin those ends up. A little bit of solder on the iron first and then just touch the end quickly. That's all you got to do to tin. And we do the same for the battery, really quickly. There we go, ready to go. Add that little bridge now. Got the bridge in place. Grab a little bit of solder on your iron, get some fresh flux and tap it on and cool it off. Now same for the other one. Clean the iron first, make sure your tip's clean. Add a little bit of solder to the iron and then just touch it. There we go. It's all connected up. Now I'll scratch off the positive terminal and we can connect it to the control board of the clipper. If you take a look up here near the red wire, there's the positive terminal there, and here's the negative terminal. So that battery positive has to go up there and the negative down here. There we go, then you have to solder it and she's away. I'll turn that off now. That wasn't meant to happen really, but there you go, she's good to go. We'll just put some solder on those connections and make them rock solid and finish the job off. So you want to solder this really quickly again. Don't get any heat into those batteries, or as least as you can anyway. Bit of fresh solder. Make sure you got your solder ready to add to the join. That's it. You can add a little bit more. There we are. Just really quickly do that, otherwise you will damage your batteries. And this one here is going to be a little bit tricky, so I might just leave that wire out the way first. I've taken the motor out of its position there, just to give myself a little bit of clearance to that pin. And now we can add a little bit of solder to that joint. So a little bit on your iron, and then we can go for it. Alright, we've got a nice little blob on there. Let's wet the two surfaces and join them. Got a nice low resistance joint there. Put that motor back in place. So there we go. It's your homemade pack all done and connected. Full battery. I charged that last night. Put it back together now. I pushed that little bit of protective foam they had from the factory battery down in there. That should stop anything getting damaged from the vibration. So make sure you put that little bit of foam back in if you're going to do this. And it should help it last a little bit longer. If you need to change these batteries in the future, you just have to heat that joint up and flick them out. It's not too big a deal. And I'll tell you what, it's a lot cheaper than 40 bucks. On this standard battery pack, there was a little bridge just sitting here. It's a little plastic wrap package. This is it. Doesn't look like much. That's a PTC fuse, a positive temperature coefficient fuse. So we need to put that in the circuit. I've removed that little red bridge. This will stop the unit from going into a meltdown if there's an issue. This little fuse will stop that from happening if there's an issue with any of those batteries. So I'll solder that into the circuit now. You can see there I've marked the polarity before I removed it. Just lever that off with a screwdriver carefully. I'll solder that into the battery circuit now. This negative on. I'll just do a continuity test on there before we join it. The fuse is still active. Fold that over to the positive terminal. Then I can solder that on. Put a little bit of extra solder on the iron. Hold it together. There we go. Now we've got that fuse in place. That'll stop any short circuit from happening if those batteries melt down. Got all the parts ready to go here. Put the case on the big clipper set. So make sure you line everything up. You see these lugs here, they're going to hook around that bottom. So put that in first. Carefully close it down, make sure everything's fitting nice. And just press that back together. So it's a reverse process to get that apart. Just gently lever this, it is pretty stiff, but you can lever this top bit out with your fingers and it will just pop away and hinge apart. Just double check, everything's working still. Next we just got to add these screws back in. They go in these little positions here. Get that located there. And there's the other one. Screw them in now. And then we can put the blades back in. This is a little torque screw, but you can also use a flat blade screwdriver, just a small one. And screw that in. Don't want to go overboard, just nip it up firm, not too tight. And now we put that clipper head in. There's a little tag at the back here. That's got to go in first. I'm also going to line up this carriage with the tip of the motor there. We line that little hook up with the center there, hinge it down, and it just clips into place like that. Same to get it out. You just push this piece up here and it will clip out again. That's how you dismantle it. Now that we've done that, we can add the little adjustment lever. So this makes that blade come in and out, as you can see there. So make sure you get that located correctly. Once you've got that on there, we can go ahead and reinstall the clipper base there. So if you line that up, you see it's under a bit of tension. Once you do the screws up, it'll hold that all in place. So while you're screwing those screws in, keep your thumb on there nice and firm. Make sure everything's seated correctly. Just do a quick check there. Make sure that motor drive was engaged. Double check everything. Put that base on. And screw those screws up. Here's a little torque driver we use. Just carefully screw them in. Once everything's in place and you're holding that clipper head down firm. And again, not too tight, just enough to hold everything down. You will break things if you go too tight. Now it probably just needs a little bit of oil. You can see that adjustment's working. The comb's coming right up and dropping back, depending on the length of the cut you want. Control fully charged. A little bit of oil, and we should be good to go on that one. We can get stuck into the little one. I've plugged in the large clipper base there. Plug the unit in, and there it is charging away. These clippers came out with a nickel metal hydride battery. You can see there, it was an 1800 milliamp hour. So you have to make sure that if you're replacing a battery in a unit, it's the same type of battery, because the charge unit inside the clipper will be specifically for that type of battery. Gone up capacity with this now. These are 1800s, and the other one we've just put in is a 3000. I'm not sure if it's going to be a 3000 being a cheaper China battery, but hopefully it's come up a little bit and we've got a bit more capacity there. So that'll be more time clipping, which means more money to be made. So not only have we saved ourselves a few bucks by making our own battery pack, we can now clip for longer. Got the clipper oil here. We'll just put a little bit on the comb. Either end, let it run down. I even like to put a little bit just on that back piece that touches that metal plate there. Just a little drop. Not too much, you don't want it going everywhere. Give it a little run. Get that oil to spread around. Little drop in the middle. See that little plate sits up against some metal in the back there too, so a little bit of lubrication in there won't hurt. As long as you don't go overboard, you don't want it dripping wet with oil. Give that a quick wipe over with a tissue, take off any excess residue, and that one's good to go. That's all cleaned up now. Polished all the clipper head up. So she's good for another couple of years, I'd say. If we need to, we can just flick those old batteries out and chuck some new ones in for just a couple of bucks. You can get those batteries off eBay, super cheap, and probably only take you 10 minutes to put that together. It's going to take you 10 minutes anyway to get into the clipper, so a few more minutes perhaps, and you can do your own thing. And then you put this little mini trimmer back together, hook in that bottom corner there, that'll hinge closed. We'll put in those 2 Torx screws up the top, that'll hold the covers in place, and we'll put the clipper head back together. When you're putting screws into plastic, just be very careful you don't strip it. What I like to do is line everything up and wind the screw backwards until it just drops into place. You should find that old thread hole like it just did. Once you feel it click and drop down a little bit, you know you're in the right spot. You're not going to be cutting a new thread or anything silly like that. You're going back exactly where it was. And then we just nip that up nice and gently, just firm. We can put that clipper head back together. Just double check it's working. Happy days. We've got this spring here. It locates into those little holes there. So that'll sit there. So I can move back and forward on that spring. And add that back plate again. So same thing. Put that little hook in first and close it up. It'll snap shut like that. And then we can add the cutter. It's got to line up onto the shaft of the motor there as well. And this spring just slots into that little groove there. It's all under tension. So when you put that top plate on, it's going to push that spring right down like that and force that up into the cutter. It's a bit tricky. So you do have to be careful with this one. It's a lot harder to get together than the other one. If you put that plate on top of the spring and everything there, it should just fall into place like that. If it doesn't, something's gone wrong. You don't want to force it too much. It should just go together like that. And then we can put those screws in and square it all away. You see it is a bit of a pain to hold it all in place. So I might just take a second to line everything up again and get it secured. There we are. All screwed back down. Let's give that one a bit of a clean up. And same again, let's put 1 drop of oil here. Another one just in the back there. Just tiny amount. And a little dab just on the center. Give it a run. Sounds better already with that oil in there. So there's another good little job done. Got that mini clipper going. It's completely cactus because of that broken joint. So we'll give that a crack. Only 1 battery in this one. Really cheap to replace. A couple more minutes than what it would take to give it a service anyway. Sounds as good as new. We'll chuck that on charge. Make sure she's right to go. So there we go, charging up. Got the light on. It's the charge indicator for the little one. And then we got that indicator on the larger one with the multiple LEDs to tell you how much charge is left in the unit. So good outcome that one. Nice and simple. And saved ourselves a heap of money. By the time you replace those 2 sets of batteries, you can nearly buy a whole new set of clippers. So that keeps them out of landfill. It's great for the environment. And we only got to recycle those in the correct location. So take them down to your recycling depot, chuck them in the battery bin, and they'll take care of them, turn them into new batteries. So take it easy, guys. Thanks for watching the episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know what you think in the comments. And we'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy.